All right, there you are now. You're very welcome along wherever you're watching us this morning, be it on Facebook, on YouTube or on Twitter. If you catch us looking at our phones, it's not because we're bored, it's because we're checking out your comments. Get your comments in at Off The Ball on Twitter or on our Facebook page where we're streaming this live, facebook.com/offtheball. You can always leave comments on YouTube and we'll read out the less libelous and the less crazy ones. Alan Quinlan is here. How you doing?
Morning, Ger.
So far be it from me to drive a wedge between you and one of your best friends, but I did talk to Ronan O'Gara about the story you told us last week. Quinny never let the truth get in the way of a good story, he said. It wasn't Annabelle's, it was the Shelbourne Bar, he said, which suggests to me that there were two incidents with the Argentinians.
Yeah, there was definitely another one that he forgets about. It was definitely in Annabelle's. Was
there one in Shelbourne as well?
I can't remember that one.
All right, so he just followed him around.
That was probably later in the night where he probably had a row with some Argentinian supporters. He probably forgets that. I
mean, that would totally back up your story that he tends to be involved wherever the trouble is.
Yeah, absolutely. We beat them again anyway. That was, we keep beating them in between World Cups. And
yeah, it was pretty bloodless. We'll get more details on some of the rugby stories going on, but just briefly, there was no real sense of anticipation in the crowd. The crowd was dead because Ireland kind of knew they were going to win that game about 5 minutes in.
Yeah, the start was really good and I thought they were so efficient in what they were trying to do and quite ambitious as well. So it wasn't as if they were, you know, kicking the leather off the ball and trying to play a territory. They were running the ball out of their own half. It all went really well for about the first 25-30 minutes. Then Argentina response that you expect.
Yeah.
That happens in rugby, kind of, if you're under the caution, you concede scores, there's an inevitable response. And we started again second half. Stockdale was outstanding. What a super try right after half time, and then we just had no ball, and they played really well for the last. So it was kind of deflating at the end.
It was a bit, yeah.
Yeah, it kind of. That's where it lost all the atmosphere in the second half. But overall, to get the 3 results was probably job done. Really, more than anything. All
right, we'll talk a bit more rugby. There's loads of stories to talk about, obviously, a little bit later on. The Peter Manny, CJ Sander contract situations, and we'll get to that around about 8:30 this morning. We do have Brendan Cummins joining us. It's a Tipperary-themed show today. He is in club action this weekend in the Munster Club Junior Championship against Oisin Langan's Ardmore. Although Oisin's technically a Kilmacud Crokes man these days, so, you know, run with the hare, hunt with the hound type thing. Anyway, we'll talk about that a little bit later on as well. We're running through the sports pages and talking about Raheem Sterling and Wayne Rooney, who were the stars of the show last night in the Premier League, as well. A hat-trick for Wayne Rooney in front of Big Sam, and Raheem Sterling with an absolutely stunning finish 95 minutes into the game against Southampton last night to give Man City all 3 points and really just confirm that they're going to run away with the title. Not even a single point dropped. So if you do want to get in touch with us, you can hit us up on Facebook or YouTube or Twitter as well. Let's run you through the newspaper headlines because it's a busy and varied day, and Conor McGregor's on the front pages of a lot of the newspapers today because Tony McGregor has been doing some talking. Get to that in a minute. First, some of the broadsheets. Here's the Irish Independent. Wayne Rooney, it's my best goal. Now, far be it from me to contradict Wayne Rooney. It's a great goal that he scored last night, but I have to say an overhead bicycle kick in the last minute to win the Manchester Derby is actually better than pinging one in from the halfway line when you're already 2-0 up. I mean, it is completing a hat-trick and at the end of his career.
Yeah, I was happy for him, though. You know, I'm a Liverpool fan, and, you know, so obviously he plays for United, he plays for two of the enemies of Liverpool, but I just think he's had a tough time, and I like his attitude. He doesn't give up. He keeps, you know, he's lost a bit of that zip, that pace, that ability. There's no doubt about that, but I like his attitude, and I was pleased for him, you know, to get the goals last night. And
it's funny how, like, all the stuff that you've read about Rooney and all the things that have happened and all that stuff, he's still, when he's got that boyishness about him that you're like, oh yeah, I'm delighted for you.
Well, you think the length of his career as a 17-year-old coming on the scene, so with Everton, going to United, he scored and won everything.
Yeah.
And he is likeable. He is kind of not the brightest, I'd say, but at times with some of his decisions. But I like his attitude as regards to sport and the way he just keeps backing it up and keeps turning up. So he hasn't played in the last kind of 6 weeks very much under David Unsworth since he took over at Everton, and he kind of threw him in there last night, and
worked.
The goal was phenomenal.
Yeah.
The strike. I think when he's talking about the strike, Jerry's talking about just hitting the ball perfectly.
And not breaking stride.
Yeah, and there was no waving in the ball. It was just bang on the money, I think, and it was a phenomenal goal. to be honest. It was brilliant to see.
The other end from the goal that he scored against Arsenal.
Sam Allardyce effect, maybe.
Like, Sam Allardyce is the luckiest man of all time.
He's just unbelievable. His timing is phenomenal.
They're 3 points off 10th now. So if they, I wish they could easily make up. And Seamus Coleman, this is the back of the Herald a little bit later on, we'll bring you that. He's nearly back to full fitness. So it's like, Big Sam walks in, the team clearly are going to survive. They're going to finish in the top 10. He looks like a genius again, and he gets another couple of seasons out of it. Yeah,
that's it. Coleman coming back is huge for him, and all Irish fans will be delighted to see that. Shame we didn't have him for some of the campaign after the horrendous injury. So one win can change everything, but I suppose the next couple of days are really important now that they don't get ahead of themselves, that they've probably to work twice as hard now at the weekend when they play again.
Yeah, but Big Sam at least has a track record of bringing players in really quickly, so they know that they're playing for their places and their careers, and he'll be happy to move them on pretty quickly. Let's move on to the Times. This is the Irish edition of the London Times, back in business. That's the Wayne Rooney story there. Penalty call was correct, says Rogers, and Ireland's future rugby star. You can just make out that that's Jordan Larmour. Everybody's raving about him. Needs to do a bit on his defensive work, everybody says. But that's what they say about all young players these days, right?
Yeah, look, he's just as unbelievably talented, pacey player who you can't... it's very hard to coach that stuff into someone. Natural talent, natural ability, pace, swerve, sidestep.
Yeah.
So all the other stuff, of course, will you start nitpicking when a player jumps through like that and he starts grabbing attention, then of course he's lots of stuff to work on, and that'll come. But what an exciting player. I think he's going to have a massive career ahead of him. The
Leinster backline looks pretty exciting for like the next decade or so. Robbie Henshaw is the old man in there, 24, 25, and you've got Carberry, there's the two Burns, there's him, there's Ringrose. It's like, that's not a bad team.
Yeah, and you think it is, when Henshaw came from Connacht to Leinster, because Leinster produced so many backs, you're kind of saying, is it a short-term thing or is it a long-term thing? And it's long-term because, and you can build a team around Henshaw because he's on the Irish team and they want to play with him now. These guys want to play with Henshaw, they want to play with Sexton. Yeah. Sexton went there because he wants to play with, besides Sexton, with Ireland and with his club as well. So many young players coming through there in the back line, and Ringrose coming back. He's going to just get better and better and better going forward. So many young players and conveyor belt talent coming through.
Yeah, so it's not the next World Cup. We're going to win it the one after that. We can go the one just out of reach.
Leinster in a very strong position with all these guys, and when you have a number, if you get a couple of injuries, then you have these young guys really enthusiastic coming in. They might not be the finished article, as you say, with Larmour defensively. We've seen that with Adam Byrne this year, a couple of errors in defence.
Yeah, but all coachable though, right?
Yeah, of course.
And a bit of experience, so this is what happens when you're in that.
And it comes with experience. When you're in those pressurised environments and maybe you make a mistake defensively, you learn from it pretty quickly. You've got to.
Yeah. Let's move on to the Examiner. This is somebody who's clearly been coachable. This is Raheem Sterling. Somebody said that the celebrations at, I was going to say Main Road, at City last night were actually the most excited that they'd seen the crowd since the Sergio Aguero goal against Queen's Park Rangers. But rightly so, because the goal is an absolute stunner. He just pings it in from the edge of the penalty area. The 5 minutes of stoppage time are up. And you're just thinking, right, here is somebody who this time last season or any point up to this career, he would have been hauled off by the manager because they're like, what's he done? What's this guy done for me? But they leave him on to the last minute and he's scoring goals late in games and he's winning games. And he's still really only a kid as well. Because he burst on the scene at 17, you think, actually, he's a bit of a veteran at the point. But
happy with him though. I'm a Liverpool fan. He abandoned ship a couple of years ago, but watching the scenes last night, and that, they've been winners, and you think that, for me, that reinforces the point that they have that little bit of grit. He's now instilled that bit of character building in them. They're not just these prima donnas who have this wonderful skill.
And the sun is out and everything is great.
Yeah, and it is. And I remember that from my own career when seasons we won. They're the ones, the away from home or the one where everything is not going well. You got to consider now every team they play are probably raising their effort levels under 10-15%, and emotionally they're trying to upset him and frustrate him, and suddenly one or two things start going wrong, and the last two performances haven't been perfect. Now, they were very dominant last night against a lot of keeper Foster, Southampton, so And that's a real sign of grit, and that's the reaction then, you say, the hard work and that togetherness. So what Guardiola has built, he's 5 minutes to go, will we get the winner? And if you really believe it, you have so much better chance of getting that score if you keep going.
Those matches when you didn't get the winner, like, because you believed you were going to, did that have a much bigger negative impact, or could you actually just go,
because
we'll get it next time?
You create the opportunities, and you're putting on that relentless pressure, and you're nearly turning up the ante, and you're kind of throwing caution to the wind. And you can sometimes concede a score or an intercept in rugby or something like that, where you're throwing passes and you're taking a little bit of a chance. So it makes you believe that you nearly got there if you don't get there, and that you got to keep doing that. And probably the question you ask after is, well, if we played like that for the last 10 minutes, why didn't we do it sooner? And that's sometimes where you just change gears and you go for it. But I watched City last night, and what was really impressive was the control. It wasn't like lashing the ball up the field. It was precision passing, and their passing has been phenomenal this season.
Even Sterling's winner, he gets the ball out on the left wing.
And was...
He doesn't, like, I think the old Sterling would have cut inside and tried a Hollywood shot, but instead he picks out a pass, I think, to De Bruyne, and gets a 1-2 back. And gets in a much better situation, and then just curls it in, like, really calm, despite the fact that the clock is ticking into the 5 minutes are up, it's all over. But he's smart enough now.
And you have to applaud brilliance in sport. I control, when you're in the well into the 90th minute, to do that, I think was very impressive. But you see the reaction then from him. So I think he has built that bit of character and that togetherness. It does come with winning as well.
Totally, it's much easier.
But he's a no-nonsense guy. You've seen he's disciplined guys before. He's kind of, you know, the way he handled the Torre thing, dropping him, and he's not afraid to make those big calls. I think.
And during the summer, there was talk that Sterling was going to be part of the deal that was going to get Alexis Sanchez in, and it seemed at the time like, why wouldn't you get rid of him? You know, like, what is it?
Well, he obviously saw something in Sterling, the quality and the talent, and probably wanted to make him stronger and more resilient.
He could be Player of the Year if he's phenomenal at the moment. Definitely in the conversation for it, which, you know, maybe people might have thought was a bit of a flash in the pan.
I still can't get it out of my mind.
But he clearly did the right thing for himself.
Liverpool. That's what someone said to me outside this morning. He wanted to win something.
You're like a Munster fan talking about Peter Manny and Simon Zebo. It's like, but actually they've got to do it, right?
Yeah.
We'll talk more about that a little bit later on. So let's move on to the Irish Times. Again, Raheem Sterling, the picture there. Sterling's stunning late strike maintains City momentum. And then that's just the rest of the match reports. Robbie Brady scored a great goal for Burnley, who were up to 6th in the Premier League. Absolutely remarkable stuff there. So let's bring you through the front pages of some of the tabloids. And this is where these stories start to get a little bit serious. Kinahan gang are not after Mike Connor. So Tony McGregor, who has become a celebrity in his own right during the Conor McGregor journey to his 100 million fortune, answered the door yesterday in a pair of aviator sunglasses to a reporter from the Mirror and said, I'd view 95% of that story as nonsense, and the other 5% is overly exaggerated, and that's it. Now, I guess what Tony has done there is confirm that there was an incident in the pub in Crumlin, and he seems to be implicating the fact, or seems to be confirming the fact that Conor McGregor was there, and so something did happen. But anyway, Kinahan gang are not after Mike Connor is the story on the Daily Mirror, and rather than go on with that, I'm going to tell you the story on the Star to put it all together. Mobster tells Connor it's brawl good. So the Star have a different angle on this. They're saying that there's no trouble after Thug's associate hit by mistake in pub. So they're saying that they've actually spoken to sources who can confirm that an incident did happen, but that McGregor is not in any imminent danger because of the fact that it did happen. So this is a story that just continues to run and run. He's also on the front of The Sun, and that's about Dana White saying that it's possible he won't fight again after making 100 million quid. I wouldn't fight again after making 100 million quid. Unless you're going to make.
It's your own. It's the motivation. He keeps saying he wants to make more. He wants to achieve more things, but it does change. You know, the comfort levels.
Yeah, getting punched in the face repeatedly. Like, I guess Floyd Mayweather, I suppose, is the best example of somebody who just decided that I'm going to do this, and every time I do it, I'm going to have to make a certain amount of money, and that's what
draws you back out or whatever. I think he still has a bit more to achieve and probably will want to defend the title he has, the UFC title he has. Titles he has. I better get that right.
Champ.
Yeah, I think it's all about desire, isn't it? What does he want? It's a phenomenal story from where he's come from. Like him or not, I think some people love him, some people don't like him, don't like the whole UFC thing. But he's some businessman. It's phenomenal to make that much money and to put himself in the position, and it's astronomical to think you can make that much money so quickly in sport. And yeah, it's whether he wants to come back and has that motivation to keep going.
Yeah, he's definitely going to sell newspapers on the front and
he
back.
wants more cars, though, doesn't he? He wants to build up a fleet, and he did say that he wants to become a billionaire billionaire sports person. And
most people do that by managing other people to like.
But he has so many business things going on now that he probably will keep going, making money.
Too good to be true. This is the various Wayne Rooney headlines. The best one is actually Wayne's World, I think, on the front of the Telegraph today. Wayne's hat-trick ensures Big Sam's reign gets off to a flyer. The luckiest manager in world football, Sam Allardyce. Have some of that. And Mo stopping Salah. We haven't talked about Mo Salah yet, but he's also in the form of his life and probably in the conversation for Footballer of the Year as well, if he can continue that form. And then have some of that. The Big Sam. And Antonio Conte had to apologise, sent to the stands last night as Chelsea scraped a win really against Swansea. And Rah Sterling is the headline on the Sun from that one. The Irish News, we've got the back page for you there. This is a story about Kieran McGeeney's Armagh side. It is McCarry back with, so he's now, Jim McCarry has joined Kieran McGeeney's Armagh backroom team. And then McLean seeks Antrim chair because clubs are unhappy. This is the story that's been dominating the back pages of the Irish News all week. It's about the Antrim County Board selection convention. So yesterday was the incumbents. Today is the story about the guys who are trying to depose them, it seems. So that's pretty much the newspapers today. Interesting story in the front of the Racing Post. I'm looking for $6,000, right? So this is the British Horse Racing Authority have revealed the transcript of a phone call that landed a trainer in trouble over a bet. So this is a trainer who's got two horses running in the same race, and he knows that one of them is going to be a non-runner. They've decided that only one of them is going to run. Before he announces that the second horse is a non-runner, he rings Ladbrokes and puts $6,000 on the other horse at better odds, which seems a little bit hooky, right?
Absolutely.
Kind of seems like you've got a bit of inside information.
A little bit hokey.
And so the British Horse Racing Authority have decided not to suspend him for this, but instead to fine him. They fined him more than $3,000. David Evans is the name of the trainer. His bet was $6,000, so clearly he can afford the $3,000, and he's not getting suspended.
It's strange.
It does kind of throw the whole thing into a bit of disrepute. They're like, oh, don't worry, he's getting a fine because he cooperated with us, but they had a tape of him ringing.
If he withdrew the first horse and then did the bet, but
fair enough, yeah, that's
bet
like
before he withdrew the horse, he knew he was taking the other horse out.
Yeah, so he got better odds on the horse that did eventually do it. So
it's so hard to stop that, though, isn't it?
Well, they've got the tape recording, and they've got
that. But I'm just thinking in general.
Oh, it's impossible.
The inside information that's there is unbelievable.
And when you do find somebody, you think you'd make an example of it to say, look, we can't be having this, lads. You just can't be having it. I mean, there's ways and means to get somebody else to place the bet for you if you're that. It just looks bad.
Yeah.
And I'm not obviously giving them a charter about a good way of cheating.
But it's hard to control it, isn't it? All the inside information from the jockeys, they know how good the horse is, how well they've trained.
It definitely calls the sport into disrepute, doesn't it? A little bit. It's like
it's very hard to control it. As you say, you can just say you think your horse is going to win. You can put on a few quid there. He's going to beat. You know some of the form of the other ones. I know it's not guaranteed, but
no.
A lot of horses are just out for a gallop as well, aren't they?
Yeah, exactly.
Some of the smaller smaller meetings.
Yeah, no, for sure. Right, you can get in touch with us on Twitter @OffTheBall, Facebook.com/OffTheBall. We're live streaming this as well on the Off The Ball website. So if you just want to listen to the show instead of actually watching it, if you're driving to work or whatever, or if you're in your kitchen and you're too busy to actually be watching any of this stuff, then don't worry, we do have an audio only stream. Just log on to offtheball.com and the player should automatically pop up for you. Or alternatively, there's always a link on the page, the main story on the page when the show is live. You just click on that and there's an audio link for you there as well. Now, an amazing surfing documentary this weekend at the IFI. We're giving away a pair of tickets to a screening of it. If you want to go along, then we're going to give it to the best comment across the rest of today. So just leave your comments on Facebook or Twitter for us. Here, though, is a trailer. We're going to speak to Brendan Cummins next.
I can still actually remember the wave just wanting to be surfed. You know, a hair's breadth away, you've got pain and turmoil and fear But yeah, if you're in the right spot, you can be right beside that, and it feels as still and as calm and as right as anything else. How many of those moments might be left?
Hey, it's Good Friday, you know, the pubs are closed, but Lahinch Surf School's open, you know.
I had it all. Most of my surf companies' sponsorships are up now, and it is hard work, you know, trying to make a life for yourself when you're starting from scratch.
How long can you really keep surfing those waves without getting hurt? How long can you keep the passion for doing crazy things, you know, if the money isn't there?
I remember being really blown away when I first came to Clare and thinking, wow, yeah, what a place. Just got to make it work.
It's like having a playground on your doorstep. It's like my playground's the ocean.
Here's to an epic adventure on the land.
Feels like you're in a movie here. Such a trip.
Oh my God. I have huge pride in Lahinch. This can be as good as any other place in the world.
Yeah, bam for the mind there. Year in the life of Lahinch. Ross Whitaker's brilliant film on at the IFI this weekend. Did you ever surf?
Badly in Australia a couple of times when we were on tour there, but
yeah,
up for a minute, down for most of the time.
Did you enjoy it? Did you get into it?
I didn't have the patience to keep going and the coordination to stay up there, but I tried a little bit. We all tried it as rugby players.
Was anybody any good? Was anybody kind of natural enough to just...
Stringer was good, I think.
Was he,
Peter Stringer, yeah.
Got the
smaller
right,
guys, a little bit better posture and core.
Centre of gravity. Yeah, exactly. Right, we're turning our attention to hurling this weekend. Ballybacon Grange are up against Ardmore. That's Tibbs Ballybacon Grange are up against Ardmore in the GA Munster Junior Hurling Club Championship final on Sunday, the 3rd of December. For exclusive content and behind-the-scenes action throughout the AIB, GA and Camogie Club Championships, follow AIB GA on both Facebook, Instagram and Twitter and Snapchat as well. Ardmore against Ballybacon Grange takes place in Mallow at 1:30 p.m. And I'm delighted to say we've got Brendan Cummins live by video link this morning. Brendan, how you doing?
Morning guys, how's it going?
Yeah, pretty good.
Brendan, how are you?
Actually great, Alan.
I was saying over the last couple of days that this section of the club championship is great because we get to talk to people like you, and Moy are playing the Gael Talk, so it's like the O'Shea's up against Sean Kavanagh, and actually the stories now that we're getting from these clubs, it's an opportunity for these clubs to have a moment of sunshine and a moment in the spotlight, and really this is fundamentally what everybody gets involved in GAA about for the first place.
Yeah, it is. I mean, it's a great opportunity for us to showcase our club. I was talking to Seamus Prendergast yesterday at the media event at AIB at Running Crow Park, and he was saying exactly the same thing. You know, at our age, I suppose we're looking at facing in against each other when we're very proud of what our clubs have achieved this year. I mean, the Ballybacon story, we're relegated down from senior to intermediate down to junior, and last year we lost a county junior final against Killadangan by a point in extra time, and you know, you just kind of feel, God, are we going to get bogged down now in junior hurling? And then this year the story is we beat Tumivar in the county final. First time ever a club in 90 years has won a senior club county title, and we just then ended up beating St. Catherine's, the Cork champions, and here we are. And it's a massive task for us to try to beat Ardmore because they've done really, really well. But at the same time, you know, the kids around the parish are wearing the jerseys, the bobble hats, they're sold out from O'Neill's, you know. So look, it's just fantastic, and we're hoping that we can leave memories in these kids that'll maybe future-proof our club and get the next generation inspired to wearing the Ballybacon jersey, and I think that's what it's all about.
What's the changing room like after those couple of big games that you've just talked about, and how would you compare and contrast that with the changing room after winning an All-Ireland, for example?
Well, I think the full-time whistle in the county final was really, really emotional. I know I was in tears inside in the goals. You know, my wife and two kids came down to the goals to me when it was over. A lot of the players around the pitch, actually, there was no throwing of helmets up in the air like the hats situation or guys jumping on each other with excitement. There was just kind of a stunned look around the pitch, and really later on that night that stunned look changed in Jones to an awful lot of celebration and singing. But it was amazing. I must say, it was relief was my overriding emotion when the full-time whistle went, because I thought it might never happen, you know, and you just feel that the guys around you that you played with, I won't say all my life, because a lot of the players weren't born when I started playing hurling first. I'm at that kind of age now, so no, it was. And then, I mean, the other layer to this as well is that on the full-time whistle, a lot of the guys who would train me, like John English and Eamon Gorman, came onto the pitch, the older generation of the club, and to look into their eyes, you really see how much it means to them, you know, and you feel you've done something special, and that was a great emotion afterwards as well.
Brendan, Alan here. I was going to say, I'm intrigued by you know, at your age, having that kind of joy and happiness out of it. Is that what motivates you to keep going? The coming together, the community, giving something back maybe from where you've been over the years, and seeing all that emotion on everyone's faces?
Well, it's always been a big thing for me, Alan. I suppose the more you play Munster, Ireland, where you come from in Tiptown or Ballybacon, you appreciate that it's in the people's DNA what you're doing at a county level, and it's just fantastic that you can bring that excitement then to some small part into your community, in your parish. And again, you can, I know, try to inspire a next generation of players to keep the thing alive. And in a club like Ballybacon, obviously, you know, we struggle sometimes for numbers. We kind of look at, if somebody's pregnant in the parish, you're looking to see, is it going to be a boy or a girl and early stuff, you know, to see if the camogie or the hurling team are going to be looked after into the future. So, like that, you know, I had huge support from people around the parish, obviously, not playing through bad times and through good. And now it's just fantastic that they're going through the good times and I'm able to experience with them.
Yeah, I often wonder when players have as good and as long and as successful an intercounty career, is there that little bit of guilt down through the years that actually, do you know what, I should be doing a little bit more for the club, that now at the end of your career you actually do get the chance to not make amends, but you know what I mean, just make sure that everybody feels like you've done your duty everywhere?
Yeah, it is. I mean, obviously when you're in the inter-county game, back when I was playing, it was 4 or 5 times a week. The demands are probably an awful lot more now on players with the micromanagement that's going on in the current game. But certainly when I retired out of Tipperary on that Saturday night below Nolan Park, when I came back down to the club on the Tuesday night to get involved with the underage structure, I heard they're going well at the underage. When I walked in through the gates in 2013, there was over 50 kids inside the pitch. There was people down there I'd never really seen around the parish. It's a new world for me. And you're right, you know, I've been integrated into that underage structure. I'm in charge of the under-10 team now with the last number of years. And you are trying to do all you can to give back to the club, because I really appreciated what was being done while I was away, because I was really blinded. Inter-county is a very selfish kind of a place to be living in, because if you're not at the standard, you're dumped, and it's as simple as that. So you do have to be looking after yourself. And the club, I suppose, sometimes can come secondary as much as you try to make sure you're looking after it. So look, it's just a fantastic opportunity for me now that we have a group of players who are at a standard or level in junior hurling where we had a chance of winning something. We've done that. No matter what happens after the game in Mallow on Sunday, we're intermediate next year, which is a huge step forward for us and something else to be excited about in 2018. And certainly when you say in the twilight of my career, I'm kind of hoping I'll have another few years left. My young fella is 9. The plan is to try to play with him, and so if I can get another 10 years out of it, although we've a good under 6 goalie at the moment, so I'm hanging on until he gets right.
We had a local in one of our clubs, Brendan, who played. He was still in goals till he was 55 anyway, so there's certainly a couple of years left in you yet. When you retired, and you talk about Nolan Park and downing the Tipperary scenario for yourself, all the highs and the pressure maybe playing for Tip week in, week out, and playing in All-Ireland finals and trying to win All-Irelands. When you went back to the club, was your plan to go back coaching and maybe help out, or were you kind of pushed back into it, or is that what you wanted? Was the passion still there and the motivation to go back and play for a number of years? Because recently I was just reading some stuff about Eric Cantona, and one of the key things he says in one of his interviews is the passion must be there or else you stop, and his passion stopped. So I'm just wondering, was that passion there, or had it to be reignited to go and play with the club?
No, the passion, I must say, is always there. I'm lucky. I don't know what it is inside me. I've a massive fire that I want to keep playing for as long as I can. I speak to people who have retired out of club and they're above in the stand, and it's really the doomsday scenario. I think, Alan, for me, is that I can't play anymore. And really, when I finished with Tip, the consolation I had was that now I'm going to focus everything I have in my body, like I had with Tip, into my club, and that's exactly where it's at. I don't
enjoy it as well.
There's no doubt.
You've got to be enjoying it, like.
Yeah, I'm absolutely enjoying it. But the enjoyment for me in a twisted way is always the challenge. Like, can you be better than you were last year? And I'm no different now at 42 than I was at 22. And that's the challenge. And I check the diaries. I check all the stuff that I always did in inter-county career. They're all still happening now. I still have my challenges and goals and all those kind of things that I keep inside my head. So when I go training or when I'm during the week to make sure I'm trying to eat properly, all those kind of things are still there. And I think I have habits that were embedded in my brain from the inter-county level, and I've just carried them on into club level. And the last thing I want, to be honest with you, is that somebody goes to Mallow or goes to a match and says, geez, your man is slipping. Inside my head, that is the last thing I want somebody to say when they're leaving a match. So that motivates me and drives me and keeps me really, really competitive and on my toes. And I'm hoping that my body holds up as long as my brain wants to and my desire wants to. And that sometimes can be the fear. I don't train as often as I used to. I do an awful lot more stretch and all the stuff that you're supposed to be doing. But when I train 2 nights in a row, I'll tell you, my body absolutely aches. So
with your experience, Brendan, of what you've achieved, do guys look up to you for leadership, or do you look to them to set a good standard in leadership within the group? Because it is amateur, and I always thought about this myself. If I went back playing junior rugby or back to my club in Clanwilliam, would they expect me to come back and drive the standards and do all the team talks and tell this guy you're not on time of training and you need to do this, you need to do that? Or have you kind of seamlessly kind of slipped back into that scenario, or are you the one driving it on?
I don't know. I think your responsibility, if you're one of the older heads in any group, is not so much sometimes to tell the group the answer, is to help them to get there. I think, I could stand up inside my dressing my last year's at Tipperary, or even now inside the Ballybake, and I say, this is what we need to do, lads. But now I challenge the group and I say, what do we need to do next, lads? We're going to get a bus down to the game next weekend. It's the first time ever. We had a chat about it. I just threw it out to the group, lads, what do you think? And they were looking at me, and they know I don't give solutions for all the world. I do prompt and try to get people talking, and we decided we would go by bus, and it was a collective decision rather than one or two guys or me. And certainly before matches in the dressing room, I might say a few words, but I'm certainly encouraging, we'll say, the younger guys, because it means, it obviously means a lot to them, and they have to take responsibility on the pitch. And I think if I can create or help create an environment off the pitch that allows them to take responsibility, it'll make it easier for them on the field then to start making decisions for themselves. Because in reality, you know yourself, when you're in the heat of battle, you have to make a decision yourself. You can't stop the game and say, what do we do next, lads? So it's to try to help educate the players to get to that level, I think, is my role as one of the senior guys in there. And obviously being the goalkeeper and hitting a few frees and all, there is an added responsibility onto me to try to be a leader on the pitch. And I think that's what my aim is every time I put on a jersey. So there's no added pressure to that. It's just the natural environment that I'm used to.
Can I just ask you one question about that reintegration from inter-county into the club scene? There's kind of a general acceptance that that's what's going to happen to most players when they finish their inter-county careers. But there's also, I'd say now, a trend where players are just stopping playing the game who reach that very high level at inter-county level because they've been so flogged by the system in many cases, like their bodies break down and they actually don't have the wherewithal to go back to the club game. For you, was there any sense of internal awkwardness about how you might be received when you went back because you'd been away and kind of corralled in that inter-county bubble for so long?
No, absolutely not. No, there wasn't. I mean, anytime I wasn't involved with Tip, it isn't as if I hadn't been seen down the pitch or been at club games or underage games, or I hadn't missed any game for my club up along the line because of Tipperary. And I think there's also a distinction to be made. Like, I was very fortunate when I left Tipperary. It was my decision to go. I had kind of planned it out for a couple of years in advance that this was going to happen, and I kind of had an exit strategy, if you like. But I can imagine an inter-county player in the coming weeks and months who feels they have something to offer their team next year. They've sacrificed everything in the previous years to get to a stage where they feel they're ready to take the next level. and then a manager rings him and says, look, you're not part of my plans for 2018. And then that player can get a little bit disillusioned with everything to do with GAA or sport, and they start to say, well, I've invested everything I have in this, do I really want to go back into the club? And, it takes a piece away from them. So I didn't have that experience. I was fortunate, I said, that I got to pull the plug myself and go back to the club. But I can certainly appreciate how some players will give everything they have, and then they feel empty, and then they feel they've no more to give. But I think that's where the important part, if you can connect with your parish and your club, that they can rejuvenate you. They can say to you, look, you're one of our own. There's people going to matches now in our parish that wouldn't have gone to hurling matches before because the adventure we're on now, and that excites me and would excite all the players around me. So I think you have to find a grow or a love for the game again if that happens, Jen. It's sad to hear that some players will go down that road, but I can absolutely appreciate where they'd be coming from.
Yeah, no, fair enough. That's a great answer to that. I just want to, Oisín was talking to Seamus Prendergast yesterday, who obviously is...
That's the Ardmore, Oisín.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. My mistake, I think. I got a bit of dodgy info. Former Waterford forward Seamus Prendergast was speaking to Oisín at the AIB Munster Junior Hurling Club final launch between Knocknagree, it says here, and Ballybacon Grange.
And would you like to see that kind of enjoyment put back into county level? Because maybe guys, they do it but they don't enjoy it, and it's not a good thing. You'd like to see them enjoy it more.
Yeah, I think it's gone too serious. I think there's fellas and they're barely working at this stage. The hurling is their job almost. And I think to bring the enjoyment back, I suppose you see every team is training harder and harder every year. So if you cut it back, you'll fall behind. So that's I suppose that's the reason why it's getting harder and harder every year. But I think there should be something brought in to limit the amount of training sessions for the county teams. Maybe to 4 or 5 in the week. That'd definitely be plenty. If you wouldn't be fit training 4 times a week, the professional teams are barely doing that. So yeah. I think there should be some kind of a limit brought in on it, and seeing that I'm a club player now, something to get the club championships played a bit more briskly in the summertime when the weather is good, not to be waiting until this time of the year in the slob and muck, to be kind of dogging it out in the field,
Are you glad that the system is coming in next year, whereby everyone knows their calendar, everyone knows that they're going to have games on X, Y and Z days, they know that the games are going to be 4 weeks in a row and maybe a rest week? Is that a good thing?
I think it is, yeah. Look, if they wants to stick to the calendar, I suppose the county teams will always stick to the calendar, but the clubs, they set out a calendar for the county board sets out a calendar for the clubs, and it's never really stuck to, and you can't plan anything when you know that the calendar it won't be stuck to. So I think if they could get something brought in that is seriously, and you can look at it and say, look, we're training for a month of May for the championship, and then we're back again in August, that'd be something that would be good for the club player, I think.
Oisín's going to kill me. It is, of course, Ardmore, Seamus Prendergast talking to Ardmore's Oisín Langan. So before we move on, right, I want to talk about you two actually used to play underage football against each other. Is that right, Brendan?
Yeah, my career was prolonged. I wasn't in the same section of pitch as him, because his big rugby lad was on the other end of the field, knocking lads over like skittles.
You were forward, were you?
Yeah, I was playing the forwards. Alan was up, I think, centre forward.
I was in the forwards as well, yeah. We didn't get close to each other, but
under 16.
Yeah. I played with Arville Rovers, and we were a very successful club at the time. We won a lot of football titles, county titles, West titles, and.
Were you good at football?
I don't know. Was I good? I liked it a lot. I was decent, I suppose, decent enough.
Yeah, Brendan, was he any good?
Yeah, he was. At under 16, when you're 6'3", it's a bit of a help, and legs like tree trunks. But I'll tell you, he wasn't too bad now. To be fair, he had good use of himself. You could see though on the rugby pitch, and a lot of the rugby players who played Gaelic and all, it gives them a little bit better skill set in the ball handling and all that kind of thing. So so he was. I suppose you could think that there might be something in.
You're being very nice, Brendan.
And you can see I'm stuttering, trying to find.
You're stuttering. He's trying to find moments that I excelled on the field, but I loved the football. I played senior when I was. I played on our senior team when I was 18. So I was kind of just on that transition into the professional game, and I started getting picked in the senior team, and I loved it.
Yeah.
I remember I marked Nicky English one night. Nicky was centre back. I was centre forward. Latin Cullen played Arville Rovers in a West semi-final, and I scored 4 points on Nicky. He was a good footballer, Nicky. Brendan, I tell you, Nicky English was a really good footballer as well.
Playing in the defence.
Yeah, Nicky was centre back. So like he was such an athlete, and he was so quick, and he was they played. The guys moved around in the junior teams or the senior teams when they went back to their clubs. Obviously, hurling was his first game, but he was a really good footballer as well. But I love football. I think it was brilliant, and I played it all the way through up to you signed the first contract, and that's the end of the GA, unfortunately.
Like, no, thanks.
But Brendan's been nice there. I was a bit cumbersome. If I got a bit of space, I wasn't quick underfoot. Definitely not. And
Brendan, what about the time that the lads, I think Babs would have had a fancy for bringing some of the rugby players in to talk to you guys? Did that happen regularly, or was it a trick that pulled out more than once?
No, it was just that the lads are going really well from the Munster side, and obviously all of us, would be looking up to them and what they were doing. And Alan and Dennis Leamy arrived into the horse and jockey one day for words of wisdom. We won on the motivational side of it. I suppose it's probably best we don't say where the whole Babs experience ended up after their motivational speech, but certainly the lads came in, and it was a real help. And I can remember the two of them coming in talking about Munster, talking about, I suppose, trying to establish a brand and how to stay resilient and how they were trying to achieve things. And I think it is important that players from your county who have achieved a lot and have been in dressing rooms where there's been high pressure situations and where they've had to deal with it and they've had to help the group to deal with it. So we would have gotten an awful lot out of it, but it was the first and only time that we had the inspirational speakers in. But the lads, to be fair now, we're good now.
I remember Brendan coming in that time, and it was a bit of a tricky time, as you say. I don't know if it was the most harmonious environment because people were pulling in different directions. There was a bit of pressure on Babs.
Did you know that going into it?
Yeah, I did. So I knew that, I was just surprised at the lack of confidence and belief in guys, because I remember we had a chat about how confident you were going into the championship and where you saw yourselves going, and there was a bit of uncertainty with guys. But I think Dennis and myself we were just after winning the European Cup, and we'd been on a bit of a journey, as Brendan said. So we were trying to more share, not lecture, but share. Look, this is where we've come. This is how we've kind of come together as a group, and so it was a little bit disjointed, and you could sense that. And that everybody was not kind of on side with the management team, and with Babs and John Lahey, and that can make it difficult. But I enjoyed it, and Dennis has been back involved with Tipperary for the last few years, and I think he's a great fella. And obviously they won an All-Ireland the year before last, lost out to Galway this year. So I think that's brilliant from other sports, always sharing. We'd be as intrigued at what the GAA guys are doing.
Yeah.
There's no doubt about that. We weren't there to kind of go, here, this is how you do it. We were kind of intrigued by how those guys went, because we were fans. Tipperary guys, we going to all their games as well,
Yeah.
But sorry, just on that, it's amazing now that this is the first time really we've spoken about it. You could sense walking into our room that it wasn't quite right. And I think anybody who's been in elite sport or in a really driven group, you get the sensation that things are right, but you also get as equal a powerful sensation you walk into a group when things are wrong. So it's interesting that you had noticed that, and around that time things were very dampened down within the squad. I remember asking you a question saying how important is it before games to get into a huddle. It was a bit of a loaded question because we've been told in the previous weeks and months there's to be no huddles before games. There's to be none of that going on out in the pitch. You just go out and line out into your position. So I remember even that day asking that question just to see, and he answered it like any normal sports people would about how important it is to do all that kind of thing. So that's the kind of environment I suppose you were walking into on that evening.
Yeah, and one of the things I would have learned, Brendan, and to be fair, Mick Galway was brilliant at this in that kind of amateur stroke professional scenario. One of the most important things for us when we started out was body language and togetherness, in warm-ups, in arriving at the ground, in being close to each other. And I just sense, I think that was really important. So it's interesting that you say that about, some of the stuff kind of baffled us when we left, that it wasn't as tight and as because we were there as fans. We were there, geez, this is a great honour to be inside.
Babs asked you, did he?
Babs asked us, yeah, and I remember Owen Kelly wasn't there, and I was surprised by that, and Owen wasn't available or something like that, and I was just surprised that everybody wasn't there chomping at the bit. The motivation was there to win, but the elements and different parts of it just didn't seem right. It didn't seem harmonious, and you know, I'd have a lot of respect for Babs and John Lahey as well, but you know, and then you're hearing things on the outside that there's a bit of unrest there and the players are not happy with Babs and it's a bit old school and you know, he shouldn't have come back this time and all that kind of stuff, and you kind of listen to that because you're a fan as well. So that was really interesting, but you know, I always had that belief, Brendan, that you know, you want players to drive that togetherness, squeezing the hands. You don't, not roaring and shouting, banging heads off walls, but just, you see even a lot of modern sports people, even at top level professional sport, that little bit of a squeeze means you're looking at the guy beside you and that you're going to go to war with him if needs be.
Yeah.
It struck me listening to you there that that was the lowest point, or around then is the lowest point, and it's a miracle that you climb from that, where you're like asking these loaded questions in front of the management team, hoping that they're paying attention and listening to what the answer is, so that you can try and get some rescue from that season. But you climb from there to win All Ireland, like with largely the same bones of the group. From the playing staff, obviously, it's a completely different backroom team, but that's a bit of a miracle.
Well, it's not really like, I mean, like, in fairness to Babs and John Lahey and all at the time, they were all Tipperary people. They were all trying what they could, and people would say that Babs at the time was, he was living back in the 60s, but yet he had Alan and Dennis inside with us, which is a modern move to make for a manager, you know. So, yeah, but then you had Liam Sheedy came on board then, obviously, and things changed. I mean, it just energised all of us. It gave us all a focus. We were all really under the microscope as well under Liam, because if you breathed crooked like Liam knew about it, and in a one-to-one every month you'd have video analysis of what you did the previous month, your goal setting was sorted out for you. And like, as Alan will tell you, if you're trying to be an elite sports person and you're put into a structure like that, you'll respond. And it took us a couple of years to get rid of some of the bad habits we did in 08 and then into 09. And then by the time we got to 10, we were just simply ready to win something. And it's something I said to actually our Ballybacon, the lads down the club the night before the county final. I said it's a bit like 2009 and 10 for us in Tipperary. We looked like at a county final in 2009 in junior against Killadangan we're going to win it with 7 or 8 minutes left. And then suddenly we lost a 2 or 3 point lead. And it was a bit like that the following year then, you know. I said, look, we're ready to win this thing tomorrow. We're all comfortable in our skin now, so let's just go and do it. And that's exactly the way it was in 2010, the week leading up to the All-Ireland final. We just felt that the pressure was obviously on Kilkenny. But more importantly for us as a group, like Alan said, that extra squeeze in the hand, when you go into the circle, everybody looks each other in the eye. And that for me is the litmus test for any group, that when you go into that huddle, there's nobody looking at the grass. Everyone is looking around the circle, and that tells you then that I have all the work done. I can look my teammate in the eye. I can honestly say there's not more I could do before this game, and then suddenly you're winning things. And I think that's the transformation that happened in Tipperary over the years with Liam there. He facilitated that. He allowed the players to take ownership of it all. And hey presto, look, we won an All-Ireland.
And that's the key, I think, Brendan. You mentioned it there. We all understand the fundamentals and be fit, good attitude, character, train well, practice all the weaknesses, all that stuff. But you get to a stage then where you need to be able to look at each other, don't you, like you say, and say, well, it's kind of like the Al Pacino speech, isn't it? To be able to look at the guy next to you and know he'll go that extra inch with you. And that's it. And the intrigue in coaching and getting the best out of guys at elite level, when there's very little difference, is that bit of desire, that bit of togetherness, that bit of fight.
Yeah.
And it does make a difference. And as you say, Brendan, it's game on then. At least you can walk off the field and say, well, we trained well, we're fit, the attitude was good, players made the effort, and look, we got a bit of bad luck on the day, or something went wrong, or maybe we just underperformed, but at least we put ourselves in the position. And that's, you know, I think I followed that story from 06, 07 when Dennis and myself went in, because we, as I said, we'd be fans anyway, up to 2010. And you make a very relevant point. Babs is always going to be a Tip legend, but no matter, sometimes you just, it doesn't work for guys, and you don't get the best out of people. And we see it in some of the modern teams, you know, that little bit of disjointed scenario. And sometimes it's, the more you try, the harder it is.
Yeah.
So I think that's really intriguing, the way you say that stuff changed, and it became more player driven as well, which is what you want.
And we're probably going to see that now, I think. I know it's a conversation maybe for another day, with Pat Gilroy going in with Dublin. He hasn't won 100 All-Ireland medals and managed loads of hurling teams, but he knows how to get the best out of people. He's got a team around him. Anthony Cunningham will obviously do the hurling part. But it's not always about the hurling part. It's about the desire and how you can light up different players and motivate different players and look at them as individuals that can feed into the collective. And I think that was the skill that Liam Sheedy had. You know, he didn't take any of the training sessions. Eamon O'Shea did that, but by God, when a player got in front of Eamon O'Shea, there was a fire in his belly, a set of goals in his head, and knowing there was consequences if you didn't meet him. And I think that's what Gilroy is going to bring to this Dublin setup. And it's going to be interesting to watch and see how that develops in the coming months, because I'm sure as a people person, as a driver of people, he's just top notch.
Brendan, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us this morning. You've been great with your time. Best of luck this weekend.
Brendan.
No problem at all, guys. Thanks very much. See you.
Brendan Cummins there speaking to us ahead of that game on Sunday, and check out the AIB Facebook page, Instagram, Snapchat and Twitter for live and exclusive behind the scenes updates across the season. You can also follow the hashtag the toughest.
Can you wish him well now, or will Oisin kill you?
Kill us, yeah. We want a good game, a nice fair game.
What are the odds?
No, Matt Bros, you were saying that Ardmore are massive odds on.
Yeah, it seems that way, yeah. Draw 14-1.
Everybody wrote us off, is what the speech in the dressing room
back to the wall job. Yeah, that still goes on, still has an effect.
Does it have an effect?
A little bit. We always kind of like to have a little bit of a chip on our shoulder in the earlier days.
Yeah.
It does give you a bit.
But when you won your second European Cup, you can't really
changes. No, you can't. No, not. I think it was more even before we won the one in 06, and you know, it can give you a little bit of motivation, but ultimately you need to kind of have that belief and that work done and know you're good enough as well.
Yeah. Michael Cudahy from Nina says it's great to have Alan Quinlan and Brendan Cummington off the ball. James Byrne says, well done, Brendan, great stories. Paul Talty, nice to hear the lads appreciating different sports. This is an interesting point. Annoys me how many rugby people hate GAA and vice versa, or the anti-golf /soccer /insert sport here crowds. All sports have something to offer to different people. It's been a bit of a Tipperary themed week this week. We had Shane Stapleton from Borrisoleigh /Coola in during the week. Anyway, what does Quinny make of the rugby snobbery from the most punchable head in Borrisoleigh /Ballsbridge? I don't know if you know that Shane hates rugby. I don't know if he's outed himself as somebody you in person who goes, that rugby crowd, it's full of nonsense. He hates the talk around the game. He hates the analysis where, you know, people who run lines are diagnosed as having run a good line. He doesn't like the language around it. He's basically a hurling snob who hates rugby.
Well, I've one or two friends like that who would slag me over the years, because it's really big GAA community where I come from, who would have always said, oh, you just played rugby because you weren't good enough to play hurling. Joe Hayes, the former tip hurler, now he says it in jest, but there's a little bit of meaning to it.
He does, yeah.
But Nicky English is a neighbour of mine. He taught me in school. We used to do a coal run together in the evenings, Nicky and myself, when I was in school. And we'd always go around with a hurley and we're waiting for someone to deliver the coal or someone to come back to the house. I'd be practicing with him.
Right.
I loved hurling that much. He was my god. I wanted to play hurling for Tipperary. I wanted to play rugby for Ireland as well. But I think most of the rugby lads, and this is where it maybe differs a little bit, because in some of the rural communities, the rugby isn't embedded in the community. In some areas, it's changed a good bit. And maybe those people, they're probably a bit frustrated that rugby gets a little bit more limelight and coverage, I suppose, at times, and obviously the professional side of it, people getting paid. I'm careful in saying that. I don't want to kind of generalise and say people are thinking that way. I know loads of GAA people who love rugby, loads of them, but maybe an odd few that slag me and say, there's too much rugby on and you weren't good enough to play the GAA. But there's so many of the rugby guys who love the GAA, go to Croke Park to the football or to the Semple Stadium, or the Cork guys to the hurling. I know all the Cork guys would have, you know, passionately followed Cork over the years.
Yeah.
And we'd have banter about the GAA results.
I think the Darren Sweetnams of the world are making some people within the GAA community a bit concerned about the fact that, there's a full-time professional career available to our elite sports players, and the rugby organisations now are so good and have such quality of coaching available and analysis and strength and conditioning that they could probably take most really athletic 16-year-olds and turn them into professional rugby players by hothousing them.
A little bit of a concern, I think. There's no doubt about it, but that's just the nature of sport, and you have to give more choice to people, and I think people will always be strong. The GAA will always be strong because it's really embedded in the culture and communities, and it really brings people together. I think there's room for all the sports, and a lot. My little fella's playing GAA, he's playing rugby, he's playing soccer.
Yeah.
And then you let kids decide when they get to that certain age, and that's just the nature of sport, particularly for kids when they're playing it.
Yeah, no, that's how it's going to work, I think.
Well, I'm going to challenge Shane Stapleton now when I meet him, because
I'd like to
we're
see that.
supporting him so many years, and all along now he was wishing us bad, if you like, in the rugby. He doesn't like it.
I know he wants you to win, but he just doesn't like any of the stuff around it. That's his mealy-mouthed way of like. Anyway.
Well, we had Kenny Cunningham here last week talking about he loves the analysis. And
yeah, exactly.
It intrigues him about all that
Kenny's
stuff.
progressive, though. That's the difference.
Yeah.
Jack Oakton on Facebook about Alan's GAA career. Alan said he was cumbersome, but probably with a delicate touch. He had a stellar career. That does not happen if you're a shit player. If you're a shit top player. So there you go, some nice words from Jack there. Some more GAA just to round this bit out before we talk rugby for the rest of the show. Paul Schutte of Coola and Dan Currams of Kilcormac Killahy also spoke to Usheen at this week's AIB GAA launch. They're going to face off in the Leinster Club hurling final on Sunday. Have a look.
But how tough is it playing at this time of year, Dan? And can that be a good thing? Can that level things up?
It's same for every team. Playing this time of the year, it's not your typical summer hurling fast ball. The ground conditions, can be a bit tougher, but it's the same for everyone. So you just have to deal with it.
Yeah, you don't mind the battle, do you?
No.
I love that. Quiet and silent but deadly. Paul, this time of year, how different is it to playing in the summer, and is it a challenge that you kind of like, because whether you like it or not, you just have to do it?
Yeah, like the competition is called the toughest. Like, and if you want to win this competition, you have to have kind of every element of the game boxed off. So you have to be able to play the fast hurling, but you also have to be able to dig deep and fight your way through it. Like, so, like, you probably spend 5% of the time on the ball. There's 95% of the time you're not. We kind of focus a lot on that now, especially coming into the winter. So what are you bringing to the table? You're going to be active in that time and just do bits for the team that you can.
Paul Schutte and Dan Currams are going up against each other in the Leinster Club hurling final on Sunday. Right, let's talk rugby. Alan Quinlan, Peter Mahoney and CJ Stander and Simon Zebo and Razzie Rasmus. Things aren't looking good for Munster at the moment.
And Donegal Ryan. Yeah, so it started last year for Munster. They've had a tough story really in the last kind of 6-7 months, with Rassie leaving, then Donegal Ryan not signing, departing to Racing. Then Grobler, their new second row signing from Racing, gets injured early on in pre-season. He hasn't played since. What else is coming up? Zebo leaves, Earls gets injured, Farrell is injured, Taute knee reconstruction in between as well. So it's been all kind of disappointing news from no good news story.
Just when it looked like they had a long-term answer at out half as well, there's just some doubts about Tyler Blendell's form.
Yeah,
he's injured as well.
He straps this year, so it's been tough on him. Considering what happened last year and the run they went on, and where they put themselves, the growth they had as a group, it's just come unsettled and unstuck a little bit this year. Even though the season has been, you could say it's
grand.
They've been fine.
Yeah,
they've been fine. They lost, the Leinster match, Glasgow match away. There's been a couple of kind of big losses there in Europe. Probably should have beaten Cast in the first game, which, when you look back on it, would have been a really good result. A draw was actually quite a good result. Good win at home to Racing against a very strong Racing side in Thomond Park. And they head into Leicester now in the next couple of weeks with no Keith Earls, Chris Farrell, Taute, and potentially Zebo missing, and that uncertainty at out half. I think they've been unlucky with some of the stuff that's gone on. I
thought unfairly last year the backline was a bit criticised for not being that creative, but actually they were really good in loads of those big games where whenever the forwards created a chance they would be completely clinical, and it was on the basis of that list of players that you've just spoken about. So you take them out and really expectations need to be tempered seriously for these back-to-backs.
Yeah, well, if you look at last year, Ger, it wasn't probably in the game plan to be very expansive. Rassie Erasmus wanted to do the simple things well and play to their strengths and be really direct. And to be fair to them, they were absolutely relentless in the way they played, and they were blowing teams away, and they were scoring a lot of tries from being quite direct in mauls, in just individual carries. but they were blowing teams away and they just couldn't keep up with that tempo that they were creating, playing in the right areas. They came unstuck in the semi-final against Saracens and the final against Scarlets. Emotionally, I think they were spent just when it got to that final, and just made some errors in defence. And Scarlets kind of capitalised at the top of the ground stuff, and they were full of confidence. So it ended up being a disappointing end, but so many positives throughout the season after the incredible adversity of Axel's passing at the start. And I just felt it needed to kick on. The Rassie story was the first hammer blow. Well, Donica Ryan, Rassie, they were two kind of big blows that they didn't need. You talk about having growth and building a little bit, and now you've Zebo gone. The injury profile, as I said, and then you're talking about Peter O'Mahony, someone who kind of epitomises the kind of character and spirit that you want.
Yeah.
He was a natural successor coming in when Paul, even when I was there, Peter kind of overlapped for a couple of seasons, and I played a couple of times with him, played for a couple of seasons with him, and you just saw from the very start that this was a guy who had that leadership quality, that ability to motivate guys, and you know, if somebody like that leaves now, what's it kind of saying to the structure and trying to build what you're trying to build for the future, and then the uncertainty with Stander as well?
Well, I'll ask you specifically about Stander after we watch this video. It's Donegal Callan speaking last night on Wednesday Night Rugby. Himself and Keith Wood were on with Nathan last night. Here he is talking about when he himself realised his own value.
For me, it's a no-brainer. Peter O'Mahony playing for Munster, boom, just make it happen. You know, it's just like he's the heartbeat of the place at the moment, and it's so important that we keep that. And just on a personal basis, he's a fellow that drops logs to my house since I moved to England, so I'd be in an awful way. Jenny and the kids would be frozen at home.
Did you ever need to go and push it with the IRFU? Did you ever need to let it be known, get your agent to put it out there that there was interest from abroad to get the best deal?
Oh yeah, look, certainly myself. I just remember once in 2005, I went over to Gloucester to have a look. I didn't know my market value. I was on a provincial contract, and you can chat to agents, but there's nothing like actually sitting down across the way from the clubs and finding out what your value was. And that led to me moving on to a national contract, and I was really happy with that. What's happened now is the money is so great that, you know, like Nathan, for me, it would have been a disaster if they'd offered me a brilliant deal, because I didn't want to go, you know. I loved playing for Munster, loved playing for Ireland. I knew all the how well looked after I was within the system, the player welfare. Woody touched on it there, but there's a value on that. There's a cost value on it. Some of our big players, like we spoke about Johnny Sexton the other week, how little, you know, how many openings at 10 there is for other guys for how well he's looked after within the system. So I think you have to put a value on that, and you also have to put a value on playing for a team you love, playing for a team you grew up wanting to play for. So I feel these players, they'll know they'll get money and they'll get bigger money, but I think they just want what's right and what's the market value. They could go for more money to different clubs and bigger clubs, but I think there's a price on being looked after, and there's a price on winning with your friends and winning with a team you love.
And it's finding that balance between what the value of what you should be paid, and then that little bit of stuff that is emotional, and then actually a fair price from the IRFU. What I'm being told is that the IRFU are lowballing everybody at the moment, and that they're not paying anybody what they feel is their market rate, and they've got the constant poor mouth on the whole time, and oh, we're nearly broke, and they're not. They're making money hand over fist, and they've got access to pots of cash that other sports organisations don't have, and like, get on with it and pay our best players.
Yeah, it's tricky. It's kind of like the stock exchange, isn't it? When you're playing well, your stock is high, and when you're kind of not playing particularly well, it kind of drops down. So you think someone like Peter O'Mahony, his stock has to be high. He's coming on the back of, you know, he had that injury at the World Cup. So if his contract is up in between there and he's not back in the Irish squad and he's just playing for Munster and he's struggling to get back, and fitness-wise, then you don't have a huge kind of leg to stand on. You're hoping to get a contract with incentives.
Yeah.
And incentives are built into a lot of these contracts. So I think the IRFU are fair that way. They incentivise a lot of the contracts for guys who are maybe not guaranteed starters in the Irish team. But his stock has to be high because he captained the Lions in the summer. He's back on the Irish team. He played well in the last, throughout November. But it's a business, Ger, and you know, the IRFU get the criticism sometimes of not making the right offers, but you know, they're going to lowball if they can, and they're going to do the lowest deal they can possible. And in return, as Donnchadh was saying there, your agent is sent in to be the bad cop, and sometimes look for way over the odds and meet somewhere in the middle. But you think that Donnchadh or that Peter O'Mahony is one of the easier ones to try and get done, that you meet somewhere, okay, and this is the thing to understand for people. If you get a good contract here that you're happy with, it's probably going to be lower than France or maybe one or two of the top clubs in England. But the price then of putting on the Irish jersey of your player, well, for, you know, if I have a little knock on my shoulder on Saturday and I'm heading into Pro 14, with respect to the 14, there's probably 2 or 3 back rows who are chomping at the bit to play instead of me, and I'm coming back from the national team, and there's a couple of guys who there's not a huge difference in, they're probably as good. So you have that luxury to say, look, we're not going to risk your shoulder this week, honey, because we've Europe in 2 weeks, we've big Interpro derbies, you're not playing this week, you're just going to do some fitness hits, and you get a little chance maybe to have a little fitness hit and recover a bit. That's the benefit of being here. You play less games, you go to France, you're a commodity. I know they have big squads, but if you have that little niggle heading into the weekend,
you get an injection, you play.
Yeah, it's possibly, you're being pushed that way a little bit. So, plus you have the tax back opportunity here, where you get some of your tax back when you retire.
Don't you have that though now? Didn't they fix that so that, like, if you finish?
Yeah, you can still get it abroad. You can still move and come back, and you don't have to retire here. So that changed that a little bit. But I think what Peter O'Mahony would want to get, and CJ Stander, is get to somewhere where they feel that it's their market value or close to it.
Yeah.
So they're on a very good national contract here. The problem with the RFU is they're trying to limit the number of guys on national contracts that doesn't just keep increasing. So it's 14 or 15 at the moment, that it isn't 20, Leinster, 25. Right? Yeah, it is. And
it doesn't really create the sense that we're all in it together. It's like,
and there's frustration from Munster, obviously, because Donnchadh O'Callaghan. So Jamie Heaslip got offered one last year, a 3-year one. Donnchadh O'Ryan was offered a provincial one. He decides that's not good enough, I'm going to Paris. So there's a little bit of frustration from Munster people, and they want Peter O'Mahony to stay. They want CJ Stander. These are the guys that you're trying to build a future with Munster on.
If both of them went, it's an absolute travesty, and you would not be able to see any kind of sense of recovery for Munster for the next 3 or 4 seasons, because granted, O'Donoghue looks like a great talent, but then you've got to go and invest in somebody who's probably not going to be Irish qualified, who is a top quality international back row, to make up for that, and then you're spending loads of money.
How
anyway.
do you replace him, Ger?
Like, you can't.
You can't, because you don't have a checkbook that you can go out and sign 5 guys.
So go and market these lads properly to get the money in that you need to pay them. Go and put the hand out to the local businesses.
But if you're the IRFU and all those elements are coming in, do you feel like pressurised into giving what the player is asking? Would you?
Yes, because these are the foundation stones on which we're supposed to be building to reach a World Cup semi-final.
I couldn't agree with you more. So what if Peter O'Mahony and CJ Stander, not just the quality of the player, so you might say, oh well, this guy's coming through, or this guy can be as good, it's the experiences they've had, particularly trying to grow the club and get it back to, you know, being in a situation where they're getting into knockout stages of Pro 14 and Europe every year. I think that's a minimum standard. To win it again for Munster there's a lot of, you know, it's going to be very difficult with the financial weight that's going on in France and with the likes of Saracens in the UK.
I agree. It's not.
You've got to keep them somewhere or another.
Exactly. It's not impossible for those teams to be competitive. It would be if you start losing the O'Mahanys and Standards. And just put your Munster fan hat on.
But I don't think you will. Just before you go on, I think these deals will get done.
Well, they better.
I think, there'll be uproar down in Thomond Park and people in Cork and all over Munster if these deals don't get done, because...
How many season tickets do you sell next season if there's no Zebo, there's no Stander and there's no O'Mahony, or if there's only one of the 3 of them next year? It's almost impossible to convince the Munster fans. It looks like this year is going to be a difficult season for Munster. You know, if they make it to the quarterfinals...
They're having no luck with the injuries, to be fair.
Exactly.
If they have their full team out and everyone's fit and available, I think they're potential winners of the Pro 14 on their day if they get into the knockout stages, which I think they will with the conferences. They're going to get into the conference stage anywhere where it's knockout rugby. Europe is the key, I think. You know, they've Leicester coming up in the next few weeks, then they've got Racing and Cast, and I always remember this as a player. When you finish that block of European 6 games around the 20th of January every time, and you're looking forward to quarterfinals rugby, whether it's away from home or at home, preferably, you're in a good position. The season takes on a kind of a new lease of life you know, and then your internationals are away a little bit, and you have a quarter-final to look forward to. The fans have the energy
everything
in the place.
If you're the IRFU and you're looking at how the world game is going, do you try and tie these players down for 4 years now and just do World Cup to World Cup cycles? So at the start of your World Cup cycle, not in the middle of it.
The younger ones. So look, Gary Ringrose is up. His deal, I try and sign him in for 4 years. Absolutely. If he gets injured and has to retire, God forbid,
pay the insurance.
That's the insurance scenario. But someone like Gary Ringrose, only 21, 22, you got to sign him long term.
I'd sign him up to the next World Cup.
Yeah, if you could. Ian Henderson, you don't want uncertainty coming in around. But then for the agent, they're saying, well, hold on a minute now, the increase is market value, but you can incentivise him as well, you know what I mean?
If you make the Lions, or if you, well, maybe if you make the Lions, we don't really want you to make the Lions.
But someone like Henderson, you think long term, you'd have a lot of clubs, he's up at the end of the season, a lot of clubs sniffing around him. Tyke Furlong, like,
give Tyke Furlong $1 million a year.
An astronomical tight head player. I just think he's phenomenal. The energy levels, the tackles he puts in, he's just teak tough, and the skill set he has. I think he's just the most complete tight head I've ever seen in Tyke Furlong. I think he's just a phenomenal player. He's got to keep that going. There's a bit of pressure on him.
Yeah,
his elevation has been really quick in the last kind of 18 months.
And he's stepped up every time. There's been no sense
and he's just lovely and calm and relaxed and good attitude and very humble and very respectful to opposition, and I just think he's a great bit of stuff.
Yeah, I mean, I do think that the players that we're talking about are all cornerstones of selling this team to the public and selling the game to the next generation, and that's where. So we're giving you all this money, and we're sweating that money by making sure that you're ambassadors for the sport properly.
And if you're signing the player, Ger, you got to look and see what's the value as from a playing point of view. What do they bring to their province? What do they bring to their national team? And you know, obviously. Then you give value, and you feel sometimes the RFU. There was a situation with Keith Earls a few years ago where he was nearly gone to Saracens.
Yeah.
And that there was an impasse. It went right to the last kind of step. He had signed heads of agreement to go to Saracens, which you can come back from. And he was more or less announcing that he was gone, and then it changed, and he got the deal that his agent wanted, which was higher than what he was being offered. Still lower than what he was going to get off Saracens, but like I said, he then says, well, you know, it is lower,
see the
but
trade-off.
Here's my value, play less matches, and I have that green jersey in my back.
That's fair enough. Whatever the difference is, just don't make it so that the difference is 2 or 3 times. Like what we're hearing about CJ Stander is that it could potentially be 3 times what he's getting paid.
That's the offer. And then what will you have then? You'll have a load of people jumping on this, well, this naturalisation and heated, you know, passion for Ireland. But I guarantee, and I'd question anyone out there, if they got offered 3 times their salary in their normal everyday job, what way would they feel?
Like there's no question.
Loyalty, nationality, all that stuff. It's the last thing you would think about, because ultimately at the end of the day we think of the coin, and that's understandable because you're trying to support families, you're trying to pay mortgages, and you're building your future around that, you know. So for any of these players, considering Andrew Conway is another one there's uncertainty about whether he will sign or not, or whether he will get his value. Is he seen as someone who's on the Irish team now? Probably not yet, not a starter yet, a guaranteed starter.
In the matchday squad.
He's in the mix.
Close to it.
He's in the mix. So he stays in a provincial contract, but is he getting that increase, that value? So I think just the last thing the Munster need now at the moment is to lose anyone. I mean that respect to the other provinces. I think there's more strength and depth in some other areas in the other provinces, but they don't need to lose any more players.
We should mention Ulster as well. A lot of their players, a lot of their key players. Henderson is up.
Henderson's up. Rory Best is up. So I think Rory Best's one. He'll be. You know, Rory will probably get done. He's going to be captain for 2018. 6 Nations. Tommy Bowe's the one. Tommy's on a national contract. Andrew Trimble's on a national contract.
I think Trimble has another year left.
Yeah, Tommy Bowe's up at the end of this season, so that'll probably change. Will it go to a provincial contract for Tommy? Jared Payne. the uncertainty around him. He's on a national contract, you know, whether he gets back playing or not with the headaches he's having. He's had a horrendous time around that. So there's a few more big ones there. But I think the biggest one of all, from an Irish point of view, is Tadhg Furlong. You got to get him signed up. They're all big deals.
Sign him to the 4-year deal, give him what he wants, turn him into an absolute legend of the game, and make sure that everybody knows that Tadhg Furlong is this person that he's exactly the type of person you want promoting the game. And anyway, good character there. One last thing, there's some rumours of unrest in Ulster. Things are a bit uncertain up there at the moment.
Yeah, and I think they've a very interesting, and like all the promises, I think if you look at the great intrigue of the back-to-back games in Europe, Munster play Leicester in Thomond Park on the Saturday. Must-win game for them. Yeah. They go to Leicester the following week. You know, it's phenomenal. But I think Harlequins, Ulster away to Harlequins in the Twickenham Stoop, and I think they've got to get. There's massive pressure on them to try and... Well, if they have to get out of the group, they've got to win both those games. So they've been real up and down this season, some disappointing loss. They lost to Zebra over in Zebra. So when a result like that is thrown out at you,
it's just
something wrong.
There's ripples there after that. And that was the first loss of the season, I think.
Yeah, they were beaten heavily by La Rochelle away in Europe.
When you add a new coaching ticket like that, it has to bed down really quickly for everybody just to be quiet and just for people to buy in and to have time. People are kind of, that's an interesting decision.
The coaching ticket was added because of the disappointment of last year. They're really disappointing in Europe, disappointing in the Pro 12. They didn't make the playoffs. So
it leaves the person who's left a little bit isolated.
Yeah, and Les Kiss is he's a really, really nice bloke, but something is not right there in the mix. What's going on? Whether it's the players, the coaches not betting together, so it's a tough job for him at the moment. And I think there'll be judgment around these two games, because if they get two positive results there, they have a chance of getting out of the group. And second, La Rochelle will probably win it, but if they don't, I think it's, you look at the Benetton game last Friday night, Andrew Trimble scores in the 78th minute. I think John O'Gibbs said afterwards, what were the positives of the game? Well, the first 78 minutes were all negatives, and that was the positive, the last 2 minutes where they won the game. So
things like that can change a season, but it's
just become a bit of a little common theme for Ulster. They've one good win, 3 bad ones.
Yeah.
It's just not right for the level of investment they have there. Piato's leaving at the end of the season.
Yeah, that window is closed where they were one of the teams you could see kind of breaking up. I've got a couple of quick comments to bring you. Mick O'Donoghue, very thoughtful on Facebook this morning. I understood the anti-rugby snobbery at one stage. A bunch of rich private school kids playing a sport for rich private school kids, while the GAA was for any kid from any kind of family, rich or poor. Professionalism changed things. Big, hardy farm lads playing at country clubs could become international stars. I'm from Tullow. One look at the underage setup and that club will tell you how huge an influence role models have in the community. The number of kids in that club will put most GAA clubs to shame. There's a change coming where the sense of rugby being just for the elite. Now, still the pathways haven't quite filtered through.
I never bought into that because I came from the club scene myself. I kind of had an attitude that maybe some of the school systems were elitist and that they were getting favoured over. I tried to make an Irish foundation squad when I was captain of the Irish Youths. I was the only one from the Irish Youths team who was invited into this Irish foundation set up for. It was kind of bringing the best of the schools and club guys together and put them on training programs, diet, nutrition, all that for a year. But I was the only one from the club scene, so it was easy kind of buy it. It's changed a lot now. A lot of the schools, even non-rugby playing schools, have rugby programs. Rurally rugby is very strong as well.
What you're seeing now is that anybody who's really good at club level at underage is actually getting a scholarship to come into the school.
There's a little bit of that, where some of the clubs are kind of inviting guys. So from someone from Naas in a public school out there, and they're getting attention around rugby. It's
hard to turn it down
to come into school in Dublin here.
Well, it's like reading some of the interviews during the week. Somebody referenced one of the school strength and conditioning coaches. I was like, all right. So they've got a rugby coach and they've got a strength and conditioning coach, and all those other facilities that they have. Like it's kind of world class facilities. So you're asking people not to avail of the opportunity that their rugby skills have given them for this education, which is obviously very expensive, and it kind of is.
Sure, my little fella's 8. He's playing rugby 3 times a week as an 8-year-old in school.
Right.
It's phenomenal in Dublin here. Yeah, it's phenomenal. So there's so much. It's semi-professional for kids really. The kind of facilities they have, but I think it's great for them. He loves it.
People will have mixed feelings about that.
Yeah, of course. But he plays GA as well, and he loves that. So it's different. But I think that snobbery thing it's not there like it used to be. I think, like I said at the start when we were chatting to Brendan, so many of the rugby lads play GA anyway. Even if they've gone to a private school here in Dublin or in Limerick or in Cork or up north, they play. A lot of them are involved.
Less so up north.
Less so up north, yeah. But a lot of them are involved heavily in GA clubs and love the GA as well and have played GA.
Yeah. I mean, there's definitely a way for everybody to coexist happily. It's just working out exactly what the boundaries are. Julian Graham on Facebook says, it's stump up time. The IRFU need to keep the likes of Peter Mahoney and CJ, but there's also a responsibility for the lads to make sure they repay the investment in them as well. It turns out that they've already repaid the investment, and we know these guys are going to be, barring injury, mainstays of at least the Munster team, which is incredibly important for spreading the gospel of the game. On Man City last night, Noel Cahill says on Periscope, I love the way Pep was giving out to Redmond about not playing to his potential after the game. There was a bit of time wasting going on, and Pep went over and had a word with one of the Southampton players, giving out to him, you're a much better player than this, which seems a little bit like you're overstepping the mark. Hello from Maputo in Mozambique. With the autumn series finished, what teams are best positioned going into the next round of European rugby matches? Well,
Leinster. Yeah, I think Leinster, from an Irish point of view, Leinster, obviously they're away at the Exeter Chiefs, who were Premiership champions last year. That's not going to be easy, but I think they're in a good position. They can even afford to lose that one, beat them at home, and then after Christmas they'll qualify. They'll top the group there, I think. So probably Leinster from an Irish point of view.
All right, the last comment here is from James Walsh on Facebook. Great to be able to listen from the United Arab Emirates. I hope they're not censoring us too much on that feed there. Right, so last piece for you now is from the news round last night. Conversation turned to odd post-sport careers.
Now, it has to be a proper career change. Yeah. Moving into television or punditry.
Dancing with the Stars or something
doesn't count. Strictly, doesn't count. They're getting that through their fame from their sport. This needs to be a complete U-turn.
Lee Bowyer is involved in carp fishing in France. He owns some kind of carp fishing lake or something, yeah.
Oh, the other one we should have mentioned. Thomas Gravison. So we're talking Thomas Gravison, maybe 80, 90, 100 million. Matthew Flamini owns a biochemical company that are working on a new form of fuel which could be worth billions in a few years' time.
Could be.
No, I think he's already worth a couple of $100 million from the investments they've got. Could be worth billions.
These are the people who tell you to invest in Tullow oil when you were younger. Because they could strike oil. They won't. He could invent a new type of fuel. He probably won't.
I'm fairly sure all the people who invested in Tullow oil now, Richie, are sitting at home in their mansions out in Dalkey laughing
at you.
You don't need to discover oil. I think, did they not discover oil? Maybe not in Tullow, but they discovered oil somewhere.
Go for them.
Listen, they made the money. Bit of a tenuous link, but the singer from Sultans of Ping, who do our outro music, is now a history professor in a university in London, Ken in Waterford. I guess the tenuous link is that their music is on a sports programme. We'll take it.
Absolutely, we'll take it.
Right, I learned not to take stock tips from either Nathan or Richie after that Farrago last night. More of that goodness available on the Off the Ball player. Competition winner today, Dara O'Toole, who asked, what does Queenie make of the rugby snobbery from the most punchable head in Borrisoleigh/Ballsbridge? Yeah, it is ironic that Shane Stapleton now lives in Ballsbridge. Well done, Dara. You've won a pair of tickets to this weekend screening of Ross Whittaker's brilliant Between Land and Sea. We'll be in touch with the details of that. Kieran Donaghy is going to join Adrian Barry and Dave McIntyre in studio tomorrow morning from 7:45 a.m. Tonight on Off the Ball, Keith Andrews is in studio. Thursday Night Football with John Giles and Barry Ryan on his brilliant book on cycling. It's called The Ascent. It's the history of Irish cycling, and it's getting a lot of chatter during award season. I think certainly should be on most people who love sports Christmas book list. We'll do more about that a little bit later. Queenie, great stuff. Thanks very much for joining us today.
Thanks, Joe.
We are, as ever, available to rewatch if you missed any of the show on YouTube, on Facebook, and wherever you get your social media. Check us out on offtheball.com as well. We're going to play out with a clip from that brilliant documentary, a little bit of calm for your day ahead. Enjoy.
One of the scariest waves you could possibly imagine. When you paddle out there, you're at the will of the ocean. You know, you've given up your powers. You know, it's out of your control. Intimidating when you're out there. You know, you're at the base of these cliffs. When big waves come, they hit the reef at a high speed from deep water. You know, you imagine the power that's going to create. A couple of 100 feet of water and it's hitting a 15-foot shelf. And all of a sudden, it stands up much harder than any other wave I've surfed.